I am Tabatha Koylass, and my business is Tab Pilates and Bodywork Center. And I live in Chicago. I live in Chicago, Illinois. I live in South Shore on the South Side, Hyde Park, Bronzeville, South Shore, all of the neighborhoods that are south of kind of the downtown area of Chicago is really where I live, where I own my business, where I play, where I shop, where I do all those kinds of things, and where I kind of like cast my net in terms of the people that I believe want to come to my studio. And it's kind of like where I cast my net out to them as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I love that notion of just quite simply accessibility, right? Like they're there. How do we get people in the door, and how do we connect with the people that are in our neighborhoods, right?
Yeah. And the people that want to do the work, and not a lot of it was, I should say, far more now than before when I first opened back in 2009, but not a lot of it was offered in my community and in my surrounding communities, right? We had to travel either downtown to our loop area or beyond our downtown area to the north side, how most
Yes.
urban cities are set up in terms of north and south.
Yes.
And we are just like all the other cities in terms of that geography. And so really creating an opportunity where, you can get high quality instruction in, a beautifully designed, crafted, managed, taken care of space,
Hmm.
and not have to travel, for 40 minutes to take a 50-minute class. So travel 40 minutes, park for 20 minutes, and then
Right.
take a 50-minute class, right? So something that you want to spend an hour and a half max on doing, it turns into a 3-hour event, which, lessens the chance of you actually being consistent in that
Consistent.
participation. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. That is. It sounds so simple, but so brilliant at the same time. And did you have people help you kind of craft this business plan and this whole strategy for it, or was it on your own that
Yeah,
you did this?
unfortunately, no. I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, so not from Chicago at all. Lived in the
Okay.
South, all of my life until I became an adult. I went to school at Point Park University in Pittsburgh, where I actually studied dance. I actually didn't go for dance, but I ended up studying dance because I really wanted to study
Okay.
dance. So I seeked out a school that had a great dance program, but I told my family that I was going for communication. And I
Okay.
started taking a dance program. One of the dance faculty members saw me in the dance class. It was literally a ballet one class, and said, you know what? Come to my office and talk. And I basically got scholarship funding to go to school
What?
to transition to the dance department. So I, in
Nice.
fact, did that and ended up graduating with a BA in dance and dance professionally for many years, which actually is what brought me to Chicago,
Okay.
being picked up by professional dance companies to dance, and loved it, right? Loved living
Hmm.
in Chicago. I had kind of thrown a little bit into wanting to be in New York and dance and live there, but
Right.
unfortunately, I didn't have a family resource that could support me being there.
Hmm.
Whereas in Chicago, I had a little bit of family here, so I had a little bit more of support in terms of, being a brand new person out of the university and not having a lot of financial resources. So having that family support was important here. And
Yes.
yeah, I have, lived my life here for as long, past what, 30, 32, 33 years now I've lived in Chicago.
Hmm.
But no, it wasn't in help, in partnership or collaboration or in support of anyone else. It was just the vision that I had, right? So of
Yes.
course, dancing professionally for many years, I found Pilates through dance. I was with the company for a few years, and I recall one of the dancers I worked with lying on the floor warming up before we performed, and the moves that she was doing didn't look anything like I was familiar with as a
Like
professional
your
dancer.
standard warm up.
Yeah, well, and
Right.
having, done everything, ballet and modern and jazz and tap, like none of that looked like any of what I knew. And I asked her about it, and she said Pilates. And I was like, "Pa, what? Who?" And she said Pilates.
Wow.
And it just kind of went the way of myself, at that point, because then I was laserly focused on being the best possible modern jazz dancer that I could be.
Right.
And it wasn't until I started teaching as a faculty member in the dance department at Columbia College here in Chicago that there was a class that we offered for dancers, and the class was around providing different movement opportunities for them. So for 2 weeks, they would do Tai Chi, and for 2 weeks, they would do yoga. And at the time, I think step aerobics was popular. So like they would try step aerobics, right? This is back in the early 90s. And we had one of the only people that we knew of in Chicago at the time that had a Pilates studio, and we had her come in and teach for those 2 weeks. I took that little mini session and of course fell in love with it, right?
Yes.
And yeah, it was a
Who doesn't,
really
right?
good.
Like,
That's exactly right. That's literally exactly right. Love it. And I loved it so much. And I recalled so much of just the 2 weeks of work that we spent with her that I would start doing it as a warm up prior to performing.
mhm.
I often was in charge of warming up the dancers prior to a concert and
Yes.
started adding Pilates into those warm ups.
Just
And
sneak
when
it
I
in there, right?
sneak it in, and when I didn't add it in there, I had dancers going, "But wait, what about that other stuff that you did when we performed at the so-and-so place and you
Mhm.
gave us a warm up there? We want more of that. We want more of that."
Yes.
And so I, in fact, started traveling to train or take classes with that woman at her
Yes.
studio. And, 2 kids, 2 new houses and a husband and a full-time job later. It got to be a little bit
Mhm.
much traveling to her, so I kind of fell off. And then one of the dancers that I worked with for years actually opened a studio in a training program. And so it was, the perfect
There you
connection,
go.
yeah, to start that
Yes.
training program. But it was at that training program that at the very first day, you know how you introduce yourself. And I introduced myself and said, one of the main reasons for me being here is because I love the work. I want to teach the work, and I also want my own studio. So that was really that little glimmer.
You just threw that out there. Yes.
Just threw it out there right at that moment back in 2000. And yeah, I
Mm.
just moved from there. I have a background, also a master's in arts education. I've tried to teach before, fourth grade. And then I went to ninth
That's a
graders.
different gift, different skill set,
Then I went to ninth graders,
different
and it was
calling.
like, oh, yes, that's exactly right on both those levels. And so, of course, I landed teaching again at Columbia College, and is really where, I continue to just build out my ideas about how and where I can pull in teaching.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Did you? It sounded like with your dance that you were fierce in the sense of wanting to be the best dancer. When you experienced Pilates for the first time, did you have that same sensation, like I want to be the best Pilates person because it caught you at certain spots?
Oh my God, absolutely, Martin. I mean, so much so to the point where, I was that person in training where I had to be told, lower your hands, stop raising your hands, stop raising my hand to ask questions, but also stop raising my hand to go ahead and demonstrate it, to be the one to get on the machine and have them use my body, to be the one that says, me, look, I can show you, I can show it. And it wasn't just me being a show off, but it was
No.
how I learned, right?
Yes.
So we're all very kinesthetic, visual,
Mhm.
tactile learners, and that's how I learned. So I was always willing. Don't let the room get too quiet when you ask for a volunteer, because I am almost often going to be the one that says that I'll do it. But absolutely, and not just in like that program that way, but also in building my studio as well. That same idea applies, right?
Yes.
Just wanting to be the best,
Mhm.
wanting to have the best. I had worked as an executive director of a cultural center. I have worked for the Chicago Public Schools, for Chicago Park District, for a coalition called Museums in the Parks, all around everything from finance to grants to business to managing and supporting boards. So really all of those types of business things I learned through that work, and was
Yes.
really able to corral all of that knowledge, all of that experience, and then open a studio, right? So to your initial question about where did I get it and who helped me? Yeah, I helped myself. I took all of those teachings and all of the best of those things to create, Tab Pilates and Bodywork Center, which, the idea and the goal in initially opening the studio was and Bodywork Center, so that ideally we can continue to grow and build and pull in other movement forms that
Yes,
I
I hear that.
believed
Yeah.
would be important in my community as well. So thus far we've had yoga, and ideally, we'll see. I mean, so much has changed in my life since that initial business plan and that business vision. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
It's a living document. It's allowed
It's
to
a living
evolve.
document. It definitely, it has evolved, right? It has evolved so far
Yeah.
beyond that, for sure. But it is the
Right.
way, yeah,
Right.
pulling from all of those experiences is the way in which I was really able to open up a space that would be a holding space and a really good like
Beautiful.
anchor, an anchor in our community, right?
Right. So with that, that sounds so awesome, and that you have that tenacity and you see the success. How have you handled failures along the way and challenges along the way?
Yeah.
Assuming that it hasn't been like roses and rainbows the whole time.
Well, and as you know, in life, that's a great assumption, right? Because
Right.
what is and what isn't. And I think one of the first barriers for me was really identifying how I can create this space that is going to thrive, right? And
Not
so
just
I had
survive.
not just survive, but thrive, right? So I had to be really diligent in even just like the initial design of it. And so what I thought about early on was, how can I partner, right? How can I partner in a way that will allow me to be my best studio operator, to be my best teacher, to be my best marketer, all of the things that would make the space great without
Yes.
having to be crazy about chasing dollars, right, in order to survive.
That's a great opening question that people don't ask.
That is correct, right? Because I saw it, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even though I didn't have a studio, I was still teaching everywhere that I could, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, literally, I would teach in, a Bally's fitness center. I would teach everywhere I could. I would teach at yoga studios. Now, all of this is on my side of town, right? I wasn't going to the other side of town
Yes.
teaching. I was doing it over here, but I would see businesses fall off quickly, right? They would get started up and there would be
Mm-hmm.
that big rush, and then they would fall off quickly. So a big part of that was really at the beginning looking at it from that perspective, so that again it can have longevity and
Wise.
not just be this kind of one small thing that happened for a short amount of time. And the way I did that was by partnering with our park district here. The Chicago Park District is an organization that offers a number of types of programs to our different communities, and they're all across the city of Chicago. And they look different, right? Because
Yes.
they're largely focused on the communities that they live in. And
Mm-hmm.
I partnered with one of those
Yes.
park district facilities and basically took a space that was a shell of a space and built out a studio. And, that really did create an opportunity for
Smart.
me to
Yeah.
be able to focus on everything else, right? I don't have to focus on the maintenance of the heat or the air conditioning. I have to fight sometimes to
Yes.
make sure they come on when they're supposed to come on, but nonetheless, I don't have to
Yes.
fight for the maintenance of them.
Right.
And was able to create a space that, has been there for a long time and is, again, as I stated, a pillar in the community. But to get back to your question, throughout that time, I've had a number of challenges. One of the first ones was, I can't teach every single class myself.
Mm-hmm.
And identifying instructors during that time was hard. There wasn't a lot of them. There wasn't a lot of training programs. And the ones that were there, they didn't look like me, which was okay, right? I've had a number of different instructors, but oftentimes they lived just as far away from me as I did from them. And so, to come in to teach a class or two, that becomes
Yes.
a challenge when you put it, into context with respect to everything else. And so
Yes.
I started training, right? So
Hmm.
I was offered the opportunity to train a group of fitness instructors that were under the Park District. And for years, I trained these instructors, foundations trainings, Mat 1, and reformer trainings, because again, this was a body of people that, one, didn't have a lot of money,
Yes.
to really enter into a comprehensive training program. And also,
Hmm.
two, didn't really have the time to set aside to do that. These are people that, are working hard, and families, and
Right.
sometimes two jobs and things of that nature.
Yes, exactly.
So I moduled the training early on and was able to identify, oftentimes out of that training, some key people that I would then fold into and mentor even further. So that
Yes.
was a big challenge that I had to come up, right, with the solution for, in terms of, okay, how do I get teachers? How do I expand the business by training teachers?
Wow. I'm
Another,
like,
mhm.
I'm just marveling at how much like your business acumen, your business awareness, your sensitivity and the solutions that you're providing. Wow, just like like I was saying to, is it Iffy? Was that the
Yes,
yeah?
yes, iffy.
Like
Yeah.
just saying, like man, like she was such a giant in what she's doing. Likewise with you too. Like
I
you
enjoyed listening to
women,
Iffy.
man, like you guys are on point with what you're doing. Amazing.
And part of what I think back to is, Martin, now there's so many others that we are aware of, right? Through, of course,
Yes.
the digital age here, and so many others, and even ones that had been doing this work, for as long as I have been doing it, in very similar ways, but had no connection to them, right?
Yes.
Didn't know them. And
Hmm.
so, not having had that network, it did take a lot of ingenuity along the way to come up with something that was going to be,
Yes.
successful and thriving. Another big barrier, I think I mentioned in our PMA discussion, was my son became ill in December of 2013.
Mm,
Subsequently, he passed in April 2015, but throughout that
yeah.
entire time, he suffered with a rare brain tumor. And I mean, we did everything, chemotherapies, radiations, about 4 surgeries. So throughout that time, I still had a Pilates studio. There did come,
Yes.
and a full-time job. There did come a point where it was no longer sustainable because one of my key instructors left, who was kind of holding down the fort, and I closed down the building. So again, another bear, yeah, right, another thing that,
Yes.
okay, I need to get through and get past. And there was a time where, the studio sat there and I don't even think I thought about it, right? Because that's just
Yes.
not what I was
That's
thinking
not, yeah.
about.
Right, right.
But taking care of myself, being in therapy, ensuring that I was creating a space for me and my family to deal with our grief, and to keep moving through it, to where, in my analogy of it, I could see in color again, became really
Yes.
the focus, became really
Yes.
key.
Yes. You said that. Can you talk a little bit more about that? You said that on Saturday too about I couldn't see in color. Like just like say more about what that means to you and why you use that analogy.
Yeah, I use it because, when you're talking to people about your grief, especially, it's not until someone has actually experienced something similar that they can relate. I mean, clearly people can
Yes.
empathize with you. Clearly people have
Hmm.
compassion. Clearly people want to be supportive, but it's not until you have a similar experience of someone that you can actually relate to them. And so one of
Yes.
the ways early on, excuse me, that I figured out how to communicate, right, this feeling that I was having, was to just talk about it, in that I'm walking through my life and all I'm seeing is black and white. And most often, all I was seeing was
Mhm.
gray, right? And that was in everything,
Yes.
literally in everything.
Hmm.
And there was a pivotal point in which I could start to, the colors starting to come back, right? They started coming back in pastels. And then, they just kind of
Yes.
continued to grow exponentially. See the look on your face? This is why I started using that
Absolutely.
analogy, because it starts to click for you, right?
And
In
as life
terms
goes
of,
on, it becomes more vibrant. The colors
that's
become
exactly
vibrant,
right.
more clear, and there's more definition between when one color stops and another starts, and you
Yes.
understand that yes.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah,
right.
that's
Yeah,
that's a
having
really good
to,
analogy.
being able to
Yeah.
see in color. And when those colors started to lift, I think I started having conversations about the studio. And it was really at the urging of my daughter, who said, look, let's go to the studio. And we
Hmm.
literally just started going. And from there, I started, I started saying to clients, come by and say hi, I'm over here. They started
Yes.
coming by and say hi. As they started coming by and saying hi, we started throwing down some mats. Because now, mind you, even though I had the space, I wasn't sure what was happening in my life with my son. So I sold all of the equipment.
Oh, wow.
Right. So
Yes.
again, that was a big hump to turn. I'm in this empty space. What do I do? So it just
Hmm.
got progressive. I started inviting people in. I started doing mat classes. I started buying equipment again. But it was another really big hump, not just for me
Yes.
emotionally, mentally, and physically, but also as a business, right? Because all of these clients that I had worked so hard over the years, literally from 2001 when I first started actually teaching, to 2009 when I
Yes.
opened, from my church basements to community centers to fitness clubs, wherever I taught, I had
Hmm.
started pulling these people, and they showed up
Yes.
at my door when I opened in 2009. And
Hmm.
then, I had to close my door. So where did they go? I wasn't online. I wasn't teaching somewhere else. I was not teaching, right? So there was another hurdle that I'm now seeing in color, but I'm not seeing people because they're not here in my business, and
Right.
really having to craft a plan
Hmm.
and develop a strategy to get them back in the door, which I must admit, it was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, because I didn't have to work hard to get them back through the door, right? They knew the
That's
quality. They
affirming.
knew that it was
Yes.
extremely affirming that they all just came back. They all just
Yes.
came back. So it was great.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Many times in life, we want the success story part, but we don't want the challenge to get to that success story.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I don't think I know of any successful business person that can't, if you ask them to talk to you about their challenges, they will easily say to you, where do you want me to start?
Yep. Yes. Oh yeah. I have clients who are millionaires that have been bankrupt, and like they'll just as fast to tell you about the moment they had nothing to their name as the car that they're driving today. Like both story, you
That's
need to hear
exactly
both
right.
sides of the story.
You need to hear both sides of the story, because it's literally, the hard work and the challenges that, in fact, as we all know, that's what's making you successful, right? Like, you're
Yes.
just not taking your hands off the pulse of what's going on. You know what I mean? Your touch to
Hmm.
it might lessen, right? You might not hold it as firmly because of something that's going on, but you kind of always have to keep your hand on the pulse of what's going on. And sometimes that's easy, sometimes
Yes.
it's hard, but it is what makes success, as we all
Hmm.
know.
Absolutely. And it's healthy to revisit that story for your own exercise to remain in that place of gratitude, right? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. The last statement we just talked about, in terms of when all of the clients showed back up when I reopened the studio, it was absolutely affirming. But the gratitude that, I was able to show, and the gratitude that I'm able to continue to show, is important. It is absolutely important.
yes.
Sure.
Mhm. Amazing. And now you're part of the Pilates Method Alliance board.
I saw your intro to that. Yes, I
Yes.
am. It's interesting because I too, like you, have had, well, I guess I shouldn't say completely like you, but I, have, you know, with the Pilates method alignment, sometimes I'm in, sometimes I've been in, and sometimes I've been out, right? And the reason that that's happened for me initially is because this is where I want to say, like you, I didn't see it as a value to my business, right? Like I just didn't see it as a value to my business.
Mhm.
During the times when I joined early on, I'm a small business, so literally I'm looking at every single dollar that I spend. And so, when I joined early, the very first year or two that I joined. And I think the biggest thing was like a studio locator, maybe, right? So I think that was kind of one of the biggest
Yes.
things. I mean, aside from the conferences that they do. And for me, again, it didn't provide, I didn't see a benefit, right? I'm a business. Wherever I spend my money, $75 or $100, I want to know that it's going to provide a benefit back into my business. And so at the time it didn't,
Yes.
right? It didn't get me hits. People didn't come to me and say, I found your studio because you were listed on the Pilates Method Alliance studio search finder. And so it was one of those things where, I said, okay, well, what is this benefit? Nope. These $75 can go to replenish the, balls that are now deflated in my studio. And
Right.
so I would come out of it, and then, some things would change about it. So then I would go back into it. So I definitely had that kind of up and down relationship in terms of trying to figure out what value it brought to my studio, what value it brought to my clients. And
Mhm.
so, when you opened with that, I just want to kind of affirm for you that, yeah, lots of us, are out here, saying, how does that bring value to me and my business? And I think it's one of the things that, as the PMA, we're going to have to constantly work on, right? It's
Yes.
not, I don't imagine that we want to be, kind of a niche elite organization, but we want to be one that if we are, an industry leader, then we want to be able to provide valuable things to our industry, right? When you think
Yes.
about any industry and when you think about successful organizations in those industries, they're providing value
Mhm.
to their members, right? There's a value add to it. And I
Yes.
think that, part of what was um, was important to me about wanting to participate on the board was to be a part of not only that conversation that wove in, not only a lot of what wove into the conversation on Saturday around diversity, equity, inclusion, but also a value
Yes.
add, right, to members.
Mhm.
Oh my, I thought I put my Poochie away. Maybe he won't come in. I'm sorry. Um, but yeah, the value add, but also finding what that value add is, right? I mean, when you think about a lot
Yes.
of like
Right.
industry-led organizations, no, go ahead. I got that thought.
No, no, I agree with you. I think I was just agreeing with what you're saying there. Yes.
Yeah, there's a value add to it. I mean, everything from, providing supports to insurance, providing supports to, ways in which you can get business loans or
Yep.
business information. I mean, like, what are those value adds? And when you think about
Regional
like
discounts.
everything, right?
Right.
When I think about industry organizations again that are successful, I think it's critical that a lot of the work that they're doing, remains. But I also know that there is, more work to be done, and especially those things that are going to be valuable to a lot of instructors and teachers that I know that are really wanting to make Pilates their full-time job in the way in which they're able to take care of themselves and their families by doing Pilates. Well, where are those supports that we can provide to them as an industry that can help them do that? That they don't talk
Yes.
about, struggling, that they don't talk about well, I want to do this, but I'm struggling to do it. That, so many of um, Black women that I know that worked so hard to build studios, the pandemic, they're gone. I mean, the fact that, I'm kind of dangling on because of that beginning work that I did. And, I'm not being kicked
Mhm.
out of a space during this time, but so many of us just all kind of went by the wayside. And, having an organization in the industry that can be a support to that as well, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad that your voice is there. Just hearing you speak just so intelligently to so many pieces of that. That's amazing. Is there any work being done in Canada with the Pilates Method Alliance or
I
internationally?
don't I don't know. When you say work, I don't think so. I know that there is the National Pilates Certification Teacher exam. I know that there's the Pilates School Approval Program where schools can go through an approval process. But I don't know
Yes.
specifically for Canada, but I still have a lot to learn in terms of just kind of
Mhm.
the kind of like the background and like the inner workings of the organization. I still have a lot to learn as
Yes.
a new board member for
Right.
sure.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. Like, so it wasn't a question of me knocking the organization as much as just saying, well, as a small business owner, where do I put my money that's going to see the best return on investment?
No, I completely agree with
And
you.
I did, yeah. So I didn't say it on Saturday, but if I had a little bit more time, I would have kind of expounded on that to say, taking ownership of my education, taking ownership
Yeah.
of the networking, taking ownership of all those different things, I found it more beneficial to do that search on my own instead of leaning on an organization to open those doors and to cultivate those relationships. So that's the kind of the angle I would look at building value from is like for the person who is doing this on their own, how do we make this a time saver for them?
That's exactly right. Like, I think that those are some of the things that I would be looking to see in terms of the PMA having and being able to provide more value to, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But listen, Martin, that's not going to be easy, right? Like that work isn't going to be easy, right? You're talking
Right,
about a what, 16-year organization,
right.
that has probably operated in the way that it's operated for most of that time.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the work that I do beyond Pilates has included managing and supporting and being a facilitative leader um, for boards, right? Both nonprofit,
Okay.
education, dance, and corporate boards. I participated on them in some way, shape, or form. And yeah, board work becomes, really challenging. I mean, when you think about the makeup of a board, right? It's all about
Yes.
the industry experts, but those
Mm-hmm.
industry experts oftentimes come from very different places, right?
Yes.
In the industry and also in their lives. And so,
Right.
really, having a board that is high functioning um, really takes a good leader to be able to understand those people that you've invited or have been
Yes.
voted on to participate in that board
Mm-hmm.
and really, corral and manage those people in a way that really is beneficial and adds a huge amount of value to the actual organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that I mean that's a fine art because the people that are in that room are all gifted, talented advocates for some piece of the work.
That is exactly right.
And that piece of the work needs expression because there's someone else out there that they're thinking about that needs that piece that they're bringing and supposed to be representing. So how do we pull all those voices together and give that proper expression and then layer in diversity and all the other messy pieces that haven't had airtime before and tile those in.
That's
It's
exactly right.
Yeah, it's a great task. It's a massive, massive task.
Where do you come from? Like and each of us comes from a different place just in our lives, but each of us are showing up at the
Right.
table also in a very different place, right? So really having the
Yes.
ability to hear and listen and see, and then make those really good decisions about, connections of people,
Hmm.
I think is really like the hallmark of having a
Yes.
good, high functioning, high operating board. And,
Yes.
again, that's not easy. One of my
Yep.
best friends in life is a lawyer, and her company does exactly that. Her company helps to build boards, make them better, facilitate all types of board things.
Yes.
And when I first joined the board, I reached out to her and was having some conversations about it. And, she just kind of reiterated to me how challenging it is, but how she just reminded me, she took me through an exercise, but it reminded me of how when I did work on a successful board, what were the things that made it successful, and that I
Yes.
wanted to pull from those and begin
Right.
to, utilize that in my work on the board as well. She was like, the commitment
Yes.
has to be there first. I'm
Mhm.
committed. I know that all four of us that were recently placed on the board, um, Nikki, Stella, Yorana, and myself, I know that we're all committed. We're all committed to the hard work, and we know that it's going to be hard work. But I think that
Yes.
the industry needs, right, an industry leader that can really help be kind of the shoulder for a bunch of things that can happen from that, right? It doesn't have to
Yes.
only be that, but it can definitely be the shoulder by which a number of things can stand on and grow from there.
Yes. Right. Now, if we broaden that conversation around the board and the PMA to just how the fitness industry, the Pilates industry is doing, if you were to date back to that Black Friday, that Blackout Tuesday tile day and Instagram to today, what would be your commentary on where we're at right now?
Martin, it wouldn't be core conversations if you don't get at the core of it, right? Um, so I
Yep.
think that blackout Tuesday to now, I would probably give us a D in terms of our grade, in
Okay.
terms of how we're doing. And the reason I don't give us an F is
Hmm.
because I'm privy to information that's, you know what I mean? So I won't give us an F because I know that we're working. I know that, again, when institutions are hard to change, are hard to turn, are hard to
Right.
modify, are
Hmm.
hard to adjust. So I think that even just coming up to this idea that as an institution in the day and age of quick social media, everything, that
Hmm.
we have to be able to be just as quick as it is. It's no longer an option, more than anything, an excuse
Hmm.
for us not to be able to be as responsive as needed. But I do give us a D because I know that we are all working, and I know that there are some things to come, and I know that we're working. But honestly,
Yes.
yeah, I'd have to say I'd give us a D. We've not done well in terms of taking the time to coalesce as an organization internally so that we can be super clear and super on point and on
Hmm.
time externally, right? So that
Right.
the
Yes.
internal has to be right so that the external facing can make a difference.
I look at my kids' report cards sometimes, and unfortunately, they've inherited their dad's not super academic prowess. So there's times that they get a C, and I'm celebrating that C is no longer a C minus. And it sounds like
It's
our
tiny.
D, yeah, exactly. So this D that they're receiving is good job. You have a D that used to be a G, not even an F. That was a
That's
G.
exactly right. Good job. And then, with the women that are newly on the board and all, and um, really wanting to push the envelope and move things forward. Our celebration, instead of like this, our celebration is like this. like, but okay, now let's keep moving, let's keep doing it, right? It's a D, but like we have so
Yes.
much more work to do. We have so much more work to do, right?
Yes. Right. And it's, I say all the time, like we in the fitness industry are in the business of celebrating progress.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We are
Right.
in the
That's our job.
business of celebrating progress. That is our job. And little by little, right?
Right.
Little by
Exactly.
little.
So
I
with
always
this,
call, I
there's
always,
progress that is being made.
there is progress that is being made. And I think that we don't have the time to not make continuous, like quick, right? Like expeditious progress, right? We don't have the time to kind of sit and wait and marinate. And I think a big challenge is, you know, I think one of the biggest challenges is the organization has to see the value in it, right? The organization must
Yes.
see the value in it, and the organization must see the value in it, and it must claim that value, and then it must work hard to, show that value, right? Show that value. And I
Yes.
think that it's really important. I mean, you probably kind of can get a sense of kind of the inner workings of my mind in terms of, being very strategic, planning,
Yes.
being clear about what outcomes I want to have
Yep.
happen, and then working towards those, right? Kind of back mapping into a plan towards that. And I think that the organization, has to rise up to the challenge and become more, organized, strategic, and forward focused on where we should go, why we should go there, but doing it a lot quicker than we are right
Mhm.
now.
Yes, absolutely. The word I like to use is intentionality. Like we can't just
Intentionality.
react, right? Like, and it's not just hiring your buddies and just like it can't be flippant and it can't be casual. Like we have to take all these things into account. And like I was saying on Saturday, has to be authentic. I
It
mean,
has to be authentic, because that's what I was going to say to you. Even with intentionality, I think that, that for me can reign a little bit differently because of what you just said, right? You said intentionality, and then you said, you can't just like hire your friends. And so for me, the intentionality there is that I want to show, that there's a brown person, and it has to be like each individual that is participating in that forum has to understand what that value is, has to be on board with what that value is, and has to truly inherently want to see that change to happen, right? It has to be
yes,
authentic. That's basically what I just said. It has to be authentic, because if it's not authentic, there will always be an intention to, make something different happen a little bit. Social media beat me up on this, so I'm going to make this happen a little bit. But without
hmm
that authenticity around truly understanding why it's valuable and being committed to that, it's not going to be sustainable, right? And we're always looking for some ways to
exactly,
sustain the work that we're doing.
absolutely, absolutely. We have about 9 minutes left, but I have a fun question I ask pretty much everybody. Who, Tabitha, would you say is your ideal client? The person
Hmm.
who walks into your space and you are like, I will train you for free forever because you are just the funnest person to work with.
Yeah. Um, you know, as sometimes as serious as I can come off, like I love laughter, right?
Hmm.
I love comedy, not all of it, but I love laughter. I grew up in a huge family. My grandmother had 9, 10 kids. 8 of them were women, plus all of them had kids. Most of us are girls. So I grew up in a huge, matriarch family, lots of women. And
Mm.
as you can imagine, right? And I grew up poor. I grew up really poor, right? I didn't know I was poor, but I mean, in terms of, standards, but I grew up really poor. So everything meant something to us. And we found laughter in, like,
Yes.
I'm talking jaw hurting, side splitting laughter.
Yes.
So I say that to say, I love clients who, um, you know, don't take themselves seriously, right? Like who just don't take
Yes.
themselves too seriously. I love clients that
Hmm.
are able to come into the studio and bring a little joy with you, notwithstanding what's going on into
Hmm.
the world. But where are we going to find the joy in the work that we're going to do today? And if you're coming
Yes.
to the studio with that, I mean, pretty much, I don't know about free, Martin, because a girl's got to pay the rent, but I definitely love those clients
Yes.
that look for, right, the joy in what's about to happen, right? I rushed to
Yes.
get here. My baby drove me crazy, my husband, whatever the scenario is, my
Hmm.
coworkers, but I'm looking for the joy that I'm going to get from being here. And that joy comes in different ways, from finding something new that happens in that same exercise that we've been doing,
Yes.
for many years. That
Yep.
joy comes in, it's a trio, and we have a new person that's joining the regular two that comes in, and that new person knows somebody else is something else, and there's a connection that happens there. That
Yes.
joy comes in the form of clients leaving with something, not feeling as good when they walk through the door, but it feels better when they came out of it. But someone that can always have that ability to find the joy. Maybe the joy was they were out for a while because of an injury and they're just happy to be back. I
Yes.
know one of the joys that I'm going to have is when I get a chance to hug all my clients, right? That's going
Right.
to be a joy
Yes.
for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, somebody that, wants to, even when it's the most challenging times, find that joy in what we're doing, in the situation that we're in right now.
Yes. Love
Yeah.
that. You are such a gift to this
Thanks, Martin.
industry. I'm really, really glad that yeah, you're doing amazing work.
Thank you, Martin. I also wanted to say it was great hearing from you on Saturday. And one of the things you mentioned, I did have a question for you. You turned and said, my studio,
Sure.
I think you said it was your COVID baby.
Yes.
So tell me a
And what I
little bit
mean by
about
that,
that. So
yes.
yeah, tell me about like your studio and your
Yeah,
a
sure.
little bit. Yeah, let me hear that.
Well, I have been in personal training for a long time. I've been teaching Pilates for a long time, and I have a colleague who has a space, and I just had my reformer in one corner, and I train my personal training clients, and then as I dove deeper into the Pilates world, start to integrate that and had more Pilates clients. And then as COVID happened, I'm working for the city of Mississauga as well. That contract ended, and I wanted to just ramp up my business. We have this lunchroom space that's 200 square feet, and I just reached out to some friends who were selling some equipment, bought some equipment, renovated the space, and decided to just go all out with my Pilates work.
I love it. I
And
absolutely
so
love
it,
that story.
yeah, it's a micro business. Like Misty Cawthon was on, and she was talking about micro businesses, and I talked with my colleague here, and we're like, let's do it, and let's make a blueprint for how people can affordably open a Pilates studio, make it a micro business within another greater space where they can lean on the multidisciplinary space that there is, chiros, physios, etc. Just like what you're doing. Like when you were saying that earlier, I was like, that's bang on. That's exactly the way to do it. Like that's, the days of, the gold star isn't your storefront 5,000 square foot 19 reformer spot. Like that's not going to do it anymore.
That is
This
not
is a
going to
broadcast
do it
center,
anymore.
and you know um
Yeah, that is not
yeah.
going to do it anymore. And I think you're absolutely right. And I also am doing some blueprint type work, interestingly enough, that you use that term for home-based studios, right? So we're building out a space in my house that's a home-based
Yes.
studio, especially in the digital age, right? And that people now are going to
Right.
want to be more at home. So what is that going to look like? And, we should be debuting it soon, like very, very soon,
Hmm.
but that ability to have a more expansive part of my digital business, but have it in a space that can really support it, right? Can really support it. It's not,
Yes.
my iPhone over here and my computer over here and my mat's on the floor in front of the
Yes.
radiator, but something that as a businesswoman, that for me, it can really support me now working with people in their home businesses, right? Versus, or in their home studios versus running out to my studio to see people in their home studios, right? Just
Yes.
really creating a scenario where I can be more effective and efficient in training people at home from my home.
Amazing. There's one comment here. Uh, Gift is the perfect word to describe Tabitha. She is the reason that I started classes in the first place. Truly a dynamic, knowledgeable, and fun.
Oh, that's cute. Who is that? I can't even see that one, right? Oh, Night
Yes.
Hustler. Love her.
Night.
Yeah,
Yes. Amazing.
great.
All right. Yeah. So I really appreciate your time today. That was like just a
Thank
great
you.
chat, and you're doing amazing work. Yeah.
Thanks, Martin. It was really good to chat it up with you for sure. And I will be watching you.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All right.
All right, you
All
guys
right. Take
have a great
care.
one. Thank you.